Coming out of another big Texas football recruiting weekend, an official visit weekend. I'm Alex Dunlap here with Cody Carpentier on Football with Friends. We're brought to you by the Man Eye Institute. See life better. Give them a call today. 1-888-WOW-2020. That's 1-844-WOW-2020. And if you have anything you need with LASIK, there's only two facilities in the whole U.S. that have the kind of LASIK that these guys have. And we're lucky to have them here and lucky to have them as a sponsor. So thanks so much to Man Eye Institute. Cody, a lot happening on the 40 acres this weekend. It doesn't, like you and I were talking before the show, it doesn't feel like we're on any kind of, who knows, something might pop as we're recording, but it doesn't feel like we're on imminent commit watch with any of these guys, mainly just due to the fact that so many of them already have their announcement dates set, right? But we got the updates we'll talk about from Sam Spiegelman at Rivals coming out of the weekend with guys that he feels like Texas has elevated their position with. But weirdly, we got to start out with what happened at A&M over the weekend with stud, I guess, athlete / defensive lineman. Athlete. Is he an athlete still, or is he a defensive lineman?
Listed as an athlete, but
Lamar Brown, right?
Pretty much looked at as a defensive lineman. That's what Jason told us last week, anyway. And
I was looking at his profile here, and it still trips me up when I see it saying "ath." Am I reading?
He's an athlete. It's what he is. It's like he can do both things. He'll do both things in high school this next year, and then when he turns the page, it sounds like he's going to play defensive line. But who knows? If he goes to A&M, he might have to play both sides. But the report coming out was, end quote, it went great, exactly what I expected. Brown told Rivals after his official visit with A&M this weekend, they broke down everything that will help me as an Aggie and also with football. And quote, I feel great about my fit there. I'm also getting closer with the players. There's also reports that he was canceling his LSU official visit this upcoming weekend, and that he wasn't going to be partaking in what was rumored to be an unofficial visit at Texas this midweek or later in the midweek. And instead, he's going to be going back to A&M this next weekend on an unofficial basis. They, of course, have one more official weekend in College Station as well. So that seems to bode well for A&M, who before Texas entering the conversation, it was LSU versus A&M. So now with no LSU official visit, it would seem that this thing's leaning pretty significantly in that direction.
What they can do for me as an Aggie and as a football player?
Yeah, that's a. I don't know about that.
Don't love it. It feels like he either got a big bag dropped on him over the weekend, or there was the promise of just I think it probably was the biggest number that he's gotten so far.
Pretty big pair of overalls they probably have to fit for him, huh?
Yeah, I don't know, man. It seems tough, dude. It seems tough because we talked about with the other two commitments that Texas has landed so far with Wells and with Berryman. Those guys bring interesting skill sets, but having a Lamar Brown would definitely be. I've said the whole time, add Lamar Brown, add Vodney Cleveland. At that point, you have a well-rounded class, a good diversity of skill sets. I do think with Lamar Brown, though, I agree with Ketchum's take on this, and that's that. And look, it's very Texas wants the guy. They want the guy bad. And Alan Clark did tweet out something where it was some kind of, I don't play chess really, but I think it was some kind of chess piece that he tweeted out. I have no idea what all these emojis all mean, especially in recruiting where it's also cryptic. But Alan Clark was the big kind of connection there with Lamar Brown. I wonder if he might know. Clearly, he knows something. I wonder if he's trying to communicate something there. But I do, in some ways, agree with Ketchum in this whole thing where it always feels like such sour grapes to do it, because clearly every Texas fan right now would love to have Lamar Brown, would love to be in the position that Texas A&M feels like they're in with Lamar Brown. It feels like they're surging. They're players that Texas feels like they're surging with. We'll get to them pretty soon. With that being said, look, and I'm saying I don't want this to sound like sour grapes. I do feel like this is a recruitment that's gonna go the distance. And so I don't necessarily agree with the people saying, "Look, you don't want to be the leader in June for a guy like Lamar Brown. You don't want to do what my dad used to do." And I've talked about this before, but I know we have so many new viewers now. It's like my dad was a hospital recruiter. He would recruit like
Mhm.
CFOs and stuff to go to hospitals. And what like his deal was like the hardest part was after he got his candidate in there and got them hired. It was like the time between the all not got them hired, but gotten them their interview. The interview's gone good, right? And then you have the hand patting stage where it's like you got to deal with the offer, and then you got to deal with the counter offers, and then you got to deal with the time where they've given their old employer notice whenever they're going to try and get him back. It's the hand patting, right? Whenever you have a bunch of people going after you and you're somebody who's being recruited, um, there's just as the school that is in the lead or the school that he might commit to, like you're the one that has to be the hand patter, and that's where a lot of stuff can go really, really wrong. And so I do think with Lamar Brown, it's going to come to the end. We do know that Steve Sarkisian and his staff during the NIL era have liked to be the ones that come in late, that come in hard, and that come in big, at the last minute. I do feel like that, the lines of communication are going to stay open with them. And certainly I don't feel like what we're hearing from behind the scenes is that they're, conceding victory to Texas A&M on Lamar Brown at this point.
No, I mean, nor should they, obviously, right? It's I think back to a year, I guess like maybe it was a year ago when we were talking about like Decorian Moore. And Decorian Moore, though, had decommitted in May, took his visits to Ohio State, Texas, and Oregon, and then committed to Oregon in July. And I think I might have phrased the same question to you at that point, was like, do you maybe feel like it's okay that his was different because he had decommitted and then recommitted? Obviously Lamar Brown hasn't committed anywhere, but would it, again, feels wrong to say, but would it maybe be like, it's okay if he commits somewhere in June or July 4th or whatever day his commitment day is? I think it's around July 4th or 10th. I think it's July 10th.
It's the 10th.
He commits on July 10th, and it's like, you still got 5 months until that December 4th date to get a guy, put the money in front of him, explain the process, explain the deal, and continue that recruitment, right? Sarkisian's always said it's the long game, it's the relationships. And Texas is pretty new into the Lamar Brown recruitment, but the Lee Allen Clark relationship has been there long enough. Again, it feels wrong to say, but it's sort of a long game play. Same thing could be said. You look at Xavier Filsaime, right? He committed to Florida on April 13th his year. He took an official to Texas in December. He committed to Texas December 18th, right? A couple days later, and he flipped. And like,
is that really a December? I seem to remember that being like November. That was in December when that happened.
I thought it was November as well, but the Rivals has it as December. So he was offered, according to Rivals right now, that's where it's tracking, his November offer and a December commitment in 2023, and signed 5 days later after that official visit for Xavier Filsaime. But nonetheless, they probably been recruiting that whole time. And then obviously the flip happened on signing day. But in that situation, it's a long game, right? He committed in April to Florida. 8 months later, he flips. Decorian Moore, well, obviously LSU, he had his commitment, and then they lost Underwood. They lost Decorian Moore. He goes to Oregon, and you had 5 months to do that, but that thing seemed like it locked up pretty fast. This one, like, I would venture to bet LSU's probably going to continue to recruit him, even though they're not going to get an official for him this upcoming weekend. I'm sure LSU's going to get him on campus at some point for a game or something over the course of the next, couple of months or 5 months. And I would probably argue it's probably going to happen for Texas as well, right? Even if he commits to A&M on July 10th.
I can't believe that was 2023 I can't believe that we're about to be up on 2 years of doing this show every day.
Hey,
it's just absolutely wild, And look, and here's an important thing to remember is that we wouldn't be able to do it every day if it weren't for our great friends over at Specs.
Kick off summer with Specs Made in America sale. We've got star-spangled savings on all your American-made favorites. All month long at Specs. Cheers to savings.
All right. So, Cody, Sam Spiegelman from Rivals on the Texas side of the equation, saying that the arrow continues to point up with Texas and elite cornerback prospect, 6.0 4-star Samari Matthews from Cornelius, North Carolina in the 2026 class. He said, my experience in Austin was amazing, from the staff and players to the energy of the city itself. What excites me most about the chance to play for Coach Sark is knowing he pushes his players to be the best in every way, both on and off the field at Texas. I know I'll be challenged to go into the best version of myself, which aligns for the goals I have for my future. So he said, Spiegelman says he's close to, he says that he's close to putting in a future cast for Texas. It looks like the Longhorns are battling South Carolina in that one. And then Spiegelman says he still likes his future casts for Felix Ojo and Xavier Griffin. We did see an interesting picture over the weekend that said like past and future. And what was it?
Yep.
Present and future. That was a tweet from Felix. I think that was Ojo. That was Ojo and Gooseby, right?
Yep. I mean, Ketch brought it up on his show also. He was like, I think the way Ketch brought it up was like, could you imagine what would you pay for a picture of potentially getting Kelvin Banks into that group? And it's Kelvin Banks, Gooseby, and then Ojo, and just talking about how Ojo looks in comparison.
Send out those flyers to every offensive line recruit in Texas. Golly.
This picture comes directly from Felix Ojo's Twitter account. This is the picture we're talking about here. These guys look, I mean, these are some good looking dudes right here from a football perspective.
Dude, Cody, I'm watching back. I'm doing a column to put up on Orange Bloods. You guys should go sign up for Orange Bloods, man. Even right now during this dead time of year, Ketchum was pointing out today on X and getting in some fights with Texas A&M reporters and stuff about just the lack of coverage that these other teams have. Like right now, we got so much stuff, and even from the analysis side, I'm going through the deep dig right now, and I'm looking up just line by line, like the highest graded play from each of the starting offensive linemen that's projected.
Ooh, that's a good idea
this year, just so you can see like the best of the best of how they, like guys like Nato Yamuzulo, like his best play was awesome, but it was like in the second to last drive of the game versus like ULM, and you probably weren't even thinking about it. But man, dude, watching back Gooseby, some of his stuff, it tickles you to watch this guy, dude. He's a really, really good player. I think it's interesting that we'll see what happens with his future, if he's here for 1 year, 2 years, and what that would mean for a guy like Felix Ojo. God, feels like Ojo would be a guy that would need to come in and play right away. And then just your thoughts on, so he still likes his future cast for Ojo, still likes his future cast for Xavier Griffin, the awesome edge rusher, defensive end out of Georgia. And then also a guy who I was kind of cooling down on, thinking that LSU was going to be more in play here, was Zayden Crimpen, who now says that he's a perfect fit at Texas. I'm a perfect fit here. He mentioned that Texas is only doing 45 official visits. They told us how they only wanted to bring in guys that fit their program. So he said it was an incredible weekend. He said that they have something special happening. So during the time that I thought Texas and Crimpen might have been cooling off a little bit in favor for LSU, for as far as the national analysts at Rivals and as far as what those comments signaled to me, is that, man, things could be actually heating up with Texas.
That's 7 guys then. If he's talking about, there's 45 guys, and then that's 7 offensive linemen that plan to come into Texas. Max Wright and Robertson, the 2 committed ones. Obviously, Felix Ojo, we just talked about. John Turntine this next weekend, and then Crimpen and Sam Roseborough were in this weekend. And I think Grayson McCoe is supposed to come in next weekend as well. But Crimpen and Roseborough were like, kind of felt like the inverse, right? It felt like Roseborough's kind of a lock, Crimpen kind of fringe after his last couple of visits to LSU and Texas A&M. We talked about it a little bit on Friday. I kind of wussed out, right? I did the coward play. I told you I've kind of been team LSU for Crimpen for the better part of the last month. And I was like, just going into the weekend, I was like, man, I'm going to flip this thing, because I felt like anything could go. I felt like you could have seen a commitment potentially out of the weekend. And he comes out saying he's a perfect fit. Like, that's – what was the phrasing 2 weekends ago from LSU? It wasn't perfect fit, right? It was
no, but it was one of these where Crimpen. Here's the other thing about Crimpen: he comes out of these visits pumped up.
They're big visits, man. Big
Yeah,
schools.
I know, but he comes out of them pumped up. So like that's just something to keep in mind. But yeah, there was similar wording and imagery invoked last week or not last week, 2 weeks, was that 2
2
weeks
weeks
ago
ago.
or LSU?
Yeah.
2 weeks ago coming out of LSU. And there was similar stuff that he said coming out of, was that Ohio? Did Ohio State do one with him in April or something?
A&M was last week.
But wasn't there one he did at the end of May or back in April or something? Wasn't there one other he did? He came out of.
He did go. So he went to Ohio State in March. He had LSU the 30th of May, A&M, and then Texas, and then he's got Michigan next weekend.
It might have been back in March. It wasn't an official Ohio State, but something where he comes out of there super pumped. So we'll see, man. We'll see what happens with Krempin. I think that, I look at it and I'm like, man, this whole thing with Xavier Griffin and just staying in that guy's good graces is super duper duper important. I know some people think could be a little bit of a tweener given his size and stuff like that. I think I think you get him in and you figure out how you're going to play him.
I think, I was going through, I'm kind of working on like an updated, different version of like a mixture of the depth chart plus the scholarship board together that kind of just like puts these recruits in a position. Like, does that make sense? Like, you're taking the recruiting class, not the committed guys, but like the guys they're recruiting, the guys that are taking the official bids and projecting them into a position. And like Griffin was one, he was kind of the reason I did this, because I was like looking for a spot for him, because if you listen, it's like some people will say like he's an edge. And then people will say, well, if you think he's an edge, well, then you're not looking at him the right way. He's a linebacker. And it's like, well, he says that he wants to be a guy that comes off the edge and he wants to rush the passer. And it's like, when I think of that, both of those things together, I think of the Trey Moore rule that we've heard is being expanded and being called a linebacker, but you still know he's going to get to the quarterback. Like, that feels like a ding, 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 ding. Like, that's the spot for him to play the Trey Moore role.
Yeah, I think. Well, I mean, to be in the Trey Moore role, he's going to need to put on 40 pounds. But I think that they can do it. He's got a big long. What is he listed as? He's like 6'4", like 210 or something.
6'4", 205 is what Rivals has him.
Yeah, so I mean, he's a slender guy, but he's got the frame to put on 40 pounds of mass super duper easily. Hey, just one other quick thing before we get out of here. And before we do, we of course have to thank our friends over at Texas Beef Traders. They just got done having a big Father's Day weekend. I hope you were able to get over there, right there in Lakeway at the corner of 620 and Loman's Crossing. You get 10% off if you tell me you heard about them here on Football with Friends. And I would just go in there, and I've been so encouraged that every time I go in there, for one, there's so many like ex-Longhorns that go in there. There's so many of these guys that live out here where I live, and or at least not where I live, but in the community that's closest to me. And it's gonna be tough for my son to make the varsity football team. I would say based on their kids, but it's just not just them, but just how many the community that's around. Every time you go in there, man, you can't go in there without the table being full, people drinking beers, hanging out, grilling up steaks. You guys should go check out Texas Beef Traders, and remember, you get 10% off now. And remember, at this point with the meat prices, it's cheap. It's cheaper than the grocery store, because the grocery store imports 75% of its meat from out of the country. Why do you want to do that? Go to Texas Beef Traders, texasbeeftraders.com. All right. Finally, just the one thing, and this was mentioned by Ketchum about John Turntine that I found a little bit interesting, to a certain degree, about Chase Calicut too, that coming out of so they were at Michigan, right? Turntine was at Michigan?
Turntine was at Michigan this weekend, yeah.
Yeah. And it's been crickets. As far as reporting coming out regarding his visit there, or whether they think they've made a move or anything like that. Your thoughts on that, about just any lack of excitement from Michigan and what it might mean for Texas?
I think it puts Texas in a good spot, right? That's been feels like, with Turntine especially, it's been A&M, Michigan, and then Texas, not in any order. Just like that's kind of been the competition. Just kind of same with like Krempin. It's been LSU, A&M, and Texas. And I think based on everything we've heard, man, it's like, even if in our heads, I think what plays with us the most is maybe the listing of the position for all these guys, just being like, well, they've all played left tackle. It's like, how can you, and instead it's like, you have to trust the process, trust Sark. We always come back to this, trust Sark, trust Flood. And if all these players go in for visits and they all come out saying, I like how the plan is written out for me. And if Turntine and Crampon and Ojo, this school continues to feel good about it, the players continue to feel good about it, there's obviously a plan in place. And Turntine will be in town this next weekend, and everything seems to be trending up.
Things are certainly trending up here on the show, man. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please like the show. Please subscribe to the channel. Tell your friends about the show. And remember, we're here every night, 6 p.m. Alex Dunlap, Cody Carpentier, Football with Friends. Thanks to Texas Beef Traders. Thanks to Poncho Outdoors. And thanks to our presenting sponsor, of course, the Man Eye Institute. Call them today, 1-844-WOW-2020. Man Eye Institute. See life better. For Cody, I'm Alex. We're done.